I'm joined today by Ryan Ruocco, very special guest. Ryan is a NBA and WNBA announcer for ESPN. He also does play-by-play for the Brooklyn Nets on the YES Network and the Yankees on the YES Network. He'll also be seen on the Yankees pregame and postgame shows, as well as a clubhouse reporter for the Yankees. So Ryan, how you doing today? How's your family? How's your fiance? And how's everyone doing?
Good, man. Good. Thank God. My fiance and I are, safe and healthy. We're in the city downtown. And my family's all good. Thank God. So, uh, you know, obviously, all of us are sort of finding, different ways to navigate our current reality. But thank God, health being the, foremost, thing on all of our minds. Thank God we feel good.
The first thing I want to talk about, you were in Dallas for the Dallas Maverick game and against the Nuggets when they were playing. It was one of the last games played on the NBA slate before the NBA season was postponed. But in fact, during the game, you found out the news that they were postponing the season. You wanted to call with Doris Burke for that. Take me through that and what was going through your mind when you found out the news.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was definitely, the most memorable night of my career. Memorable meaning, in the most literal interpretation of that definition, right? It was wild. Like there was a feeling going into that game of just kind of an eeriness that Doris and I had already sensed about the direction we were headed in, as a country, and a world. And we already had the feeling like, okay, something's about to change, but I don't think we realized it was going to be that, dramatic and that imminent. So it was, one of those kind of like reality shaking, disorienting moments. All of a sudden within the broadcast, it went from, you're calling a game where there already was sort of an eerie feel, like how much longer are we going to really get to do this, to, wow, now we are, kind of a news broadcast and trying to make sure we're disseminating news as accurately and promptly as possible to our audience, and calling the game in the proper context. Now all of a sudden this game is much different than when it started, and making sure our audience had full awareness, while also still paying attention to the game because it's still happening right in front of us, but just making sure you're doing so with the proper context of the evening. So it became a totally different kind of broadcast. It was, sobering in a lot of ways just because of the sadness that was, closing down on our world. It was challenging. It was exhilarating and fulfilling, just from the broadcast standpoint, that I feel like, we did a good job of keeping the audience properly informed and having the right tone and tenor for the night. And I'm just so grateful. Our producer, Ian Gruca, was amazing. Our director, Jeff Evers, was amazing. And I was working on air with two pros who I just absolutely love, in Doris Burke and Tom Rinaldi. So it was quite a night.
Crazy. Since that point, it's been about, I guess, almost 2 months to the date. There's been almost no sports going on from anything, so you've not been able to call NBA games or WNBA games or Yankees or Nets games. What do you miss most about not being at the stadium and at the arena? And from that, not having a chance to do that, what have you been doing in the meantime to keep yourself busy?
Man, I miss the rhythm and adrenaline of calling live action. Like when you're calling a great game and there's a back and forth and you just feel so in rhythm with your voice on the game, and you feel the energy of the crowd, and there's just this simultaneous, like, energy and rhythm, and it's so unique to sports and to play by play. And I miss that feeling, for sure, of just being in the broadcast and feeling that. And I miss the feeling of performing in that regard too. I love performing, and that is definitely the, area where I get that performance high most. So I miss that feeling of like that high you get from performing in those moments. And also the culture of like being around my teammates, and going to dinner or breakfast or grabbing a drink after the game, and kind of like breaking down the broadcast and talking sports. And I miss that, and I miss my teammates because I have a lot of good friends, in that regard. And man, I've just been trying to, come up with. It's funny. I never have a routine really, because I'm on the road constantly for different sports, as you mentioned, in different leagues at different times a year.
Yeah.
So it's not like I have a real normalized staccato to my schedule. It really fluctuates based on the month, the time of year, and just whatever events happen to be popping up. So I have certain things I do, within that scope, like, okay, I'm going to work out 5 days a week or whatever it might be. But like, there aren't a lot of times where I know, like, oh, I know for 5 straight days I can go to bed at this time and wake up at this time, because normally I might be on the air till this time, or I might have to catch a flight or whatever. Or like, I know I'm going to be with my fiance this many consecutive days. Like, no, like, 5 days I got to take a flight back for 2 days, then another one. So what I've actually really enjoyed about this period of time is having a routine. I go to bed around 11 every night, maybe 11:30. I wake up around 8 every morning. I'm getting, 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. I work out in the morning. Like I have, you know, it's really easy to intermittent fast. And I've enjoyed this time with my fiance. We've obviously binge watched shows like everybody else, but we also learned chess and have played a ton of chess during this time. I've been reading a ton. And then interestingly enough, I have had busy enough days work-wise, between doing things like this, um, and then doing stuff digitally for YES Network on a somewhat regular basis, week to week, doing my podcast with CC once a week, and then I've been working on some things for ESPN as well from home. I actually still have been, my days are still fairly busy. They're not as chaotic as my normal schedule, but they're still pretty busy.
So I want to take you back a little bit. You graduated from Fordham in 2008, correct?
Yes.
So, but at the time you were at Fordham, you were also currently working as a statistician at YES. Is that also correct during your time there? So, two things. How did your time at Fordham help you to where you are now? And then the second question is, how did you go from being a statistician to, the play-by-play man on ESPN and the YES Network now?
Man, so Fordham was instrumental in my career. WFUV was instrumental in my career. And Bob Aarons, my mentor there, was as important as any figure in my life, when it comes to my career, outside of my mom, dad, and sister. And he really was the one who taught me play by play, who taught me how to critique myself, um, how to be precise with things, uh, you know, introduced me to so many different people in the business who gave me a constant feedback and support. And so I just flat out, I know what I always said was like WFUV accelerated the learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
And I just know that if I was going to get to where I am today in my career, it would have taken a lot longer, and it would have been a lot more difficult had I not had the experience I had with Bob Aarons at WFUV. And being a statistician at YES, I was an intern, and Jared Boschnak and Ashley Fugazi, who are still two of my favorite people at YES to this day. They noticed my work ethic as an intern, and they kind of got to know me a little bit and knew I knew the game. And they had this opportunity to do half the home games in the booth as a statistician. They asked me what I want to. Now, I had never done stats, But I was, of course, like, hell yeah, I get to sit in the booth with the announcers and watch the Yankee games. Absolutely. And then I just started thinking about, like, well, how can I make it, you know, uh, something that enhances the broadcast, And I thought about it from a standpoint of what I listen to.
Mhm.
And I thought about it from a standpoint of also calling games, because I was calling them at WFUV, and what would be useful. And then I use, my ability to just search baseballreference.com and the internet. And so I kind of like sort of developed with the job, and Michael loved me on it. Immediately, it was like, you're the best statistician I've ever had. I want you doing all the games, and so I ended up doing all the home games really quickly. And within that, my focus at that time wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do these games and this is going to make them notice my play-by-play. No, my focus was, this is an awesome job. I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to be seen as a valuable part of the broadcast because of this. At the same time as I was, honing my craft at WFUV. Well, what happens is, if you're doing a good job, obviously the people around you want to get to know you better, and they take more of an investment in you. And
Mhm.
that's what happened. All of a sudden, John Moore, our director, and Kevin Smolin, our producer, they got to really like me because of the job I was doing as a statistician. They tuned into me at WFUV, listening to me do games in college. They come away and they were like, oh my gosh, Ryan's really good at play-by-play. They tell Michael to take a listen, and Michael's like, oh my gosh, Ryan's amazing. And now I have all of them as vocal champions of me. They all, to this day, I'm indebted to all three of them, because they, just would tell anyone who would listen how highly they thought of my work, including John Filippelli, my amazing boss at YES, and the best boss I've ever had. And he took a listen, and then I started doing stuff on the scoreboard at Yankee Stadium when new stadium opened in 2009. And so they got some more visibility, seeing me do that, hearing what they had heard of my play-by-play, knowing me from doing stats. And they were like, look, we want to try and get you some opportunities. So the first thing I did was a couple Fordham play-by-play games on YES. And then that turned into, when I was 23, Marv Albert and Ian Eagle had conflicts in March with NCAA tournament. And so they asked me to do my first Nets game. It was the 10 and, or the 12 and 70 season. So there weren't many wins that year, but I happened to call one of them. Brooke Lopez had a career high in points that night. And Flip did something, and I know I'm long-winded here for you, Peter, but it's a cool story, I think. It shows you what a great boss Flip is. We're at our production meeting, before the start of my first NBA game ever. I've been prepping for this game for weeks, okay? Just like so jacked up for it. And Flip tells me, he wasn't there, but he called Frank DeGrace, our producer, and said, hey, hand the phone to Ruocco. And so he's like, hey, I want you to know something. No matter what you sound like tonight, you're going to get more opportunities.
Wow.
So don't be nervous. And it was such a perfect touch for me right before I'm about to go on air with this huge opportunity, right? Because even though I felt prepared and I was very confident I was going to perform well, there's obviously, when it's that sort of situation, it feels more like an audition than just a broadcast. And that can create a different level of nerves. And Flip just totally put me at ease. And the performance went well. And from there, I got 4 Nets games the next year. Then I became the number 2 guy. And it grew and grew. And then, to Flip and Woody Fryman's credit, they were the ones who came to me and said, we want to get you involved in our Yankees stuff on air. And that started as, hosting pre and post, and then eventually became a little play-by-play and then more play-by-play. So, that was kind of the natural growth path that ended up happening there. And simultaneously with ESPN, I was an update guy, and, took the same mentality. Hey, I'm just going to crush this. Things will unfold as they should from that. Led to randomly hosting shows, which led to, 3 a.m. updates, led to regular updates, which led to randomly sidekicking shows, which led to randomly hosting shows, which led to me hosting at 5 a.m., which led to 10 a.m., which led to noon, which led to Stephen A. Smith. And then Stephen A. told people, like, you guys know about Ryan's play-by-play? Like, you got to listen to it, because I was starting to do it for YES more and more. And then ESPN was like, hey, this guy's one of our own. We should have him do play-by-play for us. And that's how that one grew.
Very, very cool. So ESPN saw you through the YES Network, or through Stephen A. kind of.
Well, they kind of each saw each other simultaneously in some ways, because the first opportunities I got at a network were statistician at YES. But my first on-air opportunity was updates on ESPN radio. And then it was scoreboard hosting for the Yankees. And then YES sees both those things happening, and they start to give me play-by-play. And then ESPN sees the play-by-play for YES happening, and ESPN wants to give me play-by-play. So they all kind of fed into each other, and ended up creating more and more opportunities.
Last year was a pretty cool experience for you. You got a chance to replace Michael Kay during the middle of the season because he had vocal cord surgery and was forced to miss time. And then you also were able to replace John Sterling for a couple games because of health issues. He hadn't missed a game in over 30 years. What was that like to kind of fill in the shoes for a little bit for two really Yankee broadcasting legends?
It was, it was amazing. I definitely, first and foremost, was concerned with John and Michael's health and wanting them to get better. And, you know, they're both friends. Michael, I'm really close with and have been, obviously, for a very long time. But doing the actual gig was amazing. And, you know, it was the Sterling thing. It was incredible because, no one had done it for so long. And John's this tank Iron Man who's always there. It's just amazing what he's been able to do. And that was one where it was like, man, I actually feel some nerves going into it, and because it's, even though I've been calling a bunch of Yankee games, it's like, this is a different assignment. No one's done it in a while. And I just had a blast. I loved working with Susan. I loved our chemistry. There's something, as you know, Peter, there's something beautiful about the intimacy of radio.
Mm.
And I really felt that, getting to do that series. And I just felt connected to the audience in a very special way. And I love doing it. And then, getting regular reps obviously always helps you get in a rhythm. And I'm used to parachuting in, doing a series or two, coming out, coming back in, and always making that work. But it definitely, of course, is easier when you get an extended runway and you're working with the same people over and over again. And so that was a joy, to get to work with Paul O'Neill, who Paul and I have been friends and I've known him forever. He used to give me on-air pops when I was our statistician, or where he'd act like I had a headset. We'd just be like, hey, Ryan, can you look this up for me? As he's on air and I can't respond, but we had never done anything on air together. And to work with him last year, I thought our chemistry was amazing. And I love that. And you know what? Anything involving the Yankees, honestly, for me, it's a dream come true, man. I love the Yankees. As I'm sitting here at my desk, I have this little Babe Ruth. You can see this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That Babe Ruth thing. It's from a Pillbox that my buddy Aaron Bergman got for me. And then I got a little wine with the NY and Ryan Ruocco on it. That shout out to Brad Val and Gary Gabriel for giving me that.
Right.
They by the way, Lexus of Route 10, great place to go. But they run it. So, but yeah, man, the Yankees for me is that's my heartbeat. So anytime you can do something where you feel like you're a piece of the fabric of the organization, it's just really cool.
And if you had to prefer one or the other, going off of what I just said, do you prefer being on radio or announcing on radio, or prefer being on camera in front of all the people? What do you prefer, TV or radio?
Well, I haven't done it yet with my shaved head, so I don't know. That might throw a new element in the mix. But I love both, man. I love both. I love doing both. I prefer TV. It's it's what I've done mostly, obviously, for a long time now. Um, and there's different, sort of creative reasons why during the course of play-by-play. Um, but I do love them both, and there's something really cool about on radio where you're in total control of the show.
You had the chance last year to be on the play-by-play for one of the best games of the year in baseball, not only the Yankees in baseball, with the Aaron Hicks game. That's where I kind of tabbed at that because he kind of stole the show with his home run, and then the catch to end the game. You were on the call for that. You made that call at the end of the game when he caught the ball. They made a T-shirt out of it. What do you remember most about that game?
I I remember the thing I actually remember most is at one point, like turning in my chair, like right at the end of one of those dramatic calls. I don't remember which one it was, to David, like spinning in enthusiasm as I'm, losing a kidney broadcasting with all my might. And David just like laughing, like smiling, laughing, and giving me like the fist pump, like, yeah, keep going, man, you're killing it, like that kind of thing. Because we were both just so into the game. I mean, that was one of the craziest, greatest games that I've ever broadcasted. I've ever gotten to experience. It was wild, man. I mean, it was an unbelievable game, and it was just an incredible experience, and it was special, to be a part of. Like the thing was, it was just like you had these huge dramatic moments that were changing the lead over and over again late in the game, and remember the Yankees also had been down by a ton early in the game, so every element of that game was just memorable. It was so memorable. And if you ask me, most fun game I've called in my career to this point, that probably would be it.
When the ball was hit by Kepler in the bottom of the 10th there, and you have the vantage point looking straight out the field,
Yeah.
did you think Hicks had a shot at catching that from where you were sitting?
No, at first, no, because I'm also kind of right. You're calculating the slice from a lefty
Right.
and the trajectory, and I'm literally starting to process, like, are you kidding me? Now you're gonna lose this game? Ugh, like, gonna take away the drama, and then then I'm like looking at him like, oh, like, does he might have a chance at it. This is gonna be dramatic. And then, like, I'm getting chills thinking about it, because it's like, I'm reliving it a little bit. As he dives in those moments, it's not easy to tell, right, if they made the catch or not when you're looking. I'm not looking at the monitor, I'm looking at the field. And I, like, just immediately could tell he did. And I was just like absolutely organically aghast that he was able to make the catch. Just like, what? What? And it was it was uh, I think what I said was right. It was a fitting finish to an unforgettable night. Like, it really was the perfect way for that crazy ass game to end.
And I was sitting on my couch right over here. I'm in Queens. I think my girlfriend went to bed, and I'm watching this game with the sound on a little bit, trying to hear your call. And then I saw him hit the ball, and I said, "Uh-oh, we just lost this game." And then I see the diving catch, and your call was spot on. I was trying to keep quiet while my girlfriend was sleeping in the room.
Man, it was so crazy, wasn't it? So
Wow.
crazy.
Wild. The next thing I want to get to, you kind of touched on it briefly, the podcast with CC.
Yeah.
How did that come about? What are some of your favorite CC stories he's told on air or told to you? And I got to bring it up too, the picture that's surfaced recently.
Oh my gosh, I know.
What's up with that?
Man, you know what? It's hilarious. I'm looking at my group chat right now, because we're recording today for our podcast on Thursday. And man, it's hilarious because he totally has transformed already, man. Like, he has been so disciplined right now. His workouts, his eating routines. He was keto for a while, had lost probably about 20 pounds, and then he transitioned over to more of like, I think, a paleo whole food type thing where he's not having gluten,
Right.
but he is having carbs now. And he doesn't drink. Obviously, we know that he hasn't drank since he went to rehab. Um, and he has been working out like a monster. And then he hasn't been having like any cheat days with his meals. None. Like his family got Prince Street pizza the other day. Shout out to Prince Street. They're amazing. CC didn't have any of it. Not a bite. Like, so he's just like locked in, man. That's a real picture. That's not a Photoshop picture. He's locked in. He's always had the discipline, but he lost so much velocity when he lost weight pitching that he felt like he couldn't do it.
Right.
And so he would often like be in trimmer shape in the off season and have to kind of put on weight in the beginning of spring training, just for his velocity and maybe also some of his mechanics and whatever. But now, no need. And man, me and him developed an organic relationship through me doing my scoreboard hosting and stuff for Yankees on Demand in the clubhouse. And I think, we always kind of thought we could do something together. And then before this 2017 season, CC reached out and was like, hey, now's the time.
Yeah.
And so we started getting, cracking on it. And, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think one of my favorite CC stories is like, so I'll give you two. They're both of the same thing. CC's famous for ghosting people. Okay. And, when we were going to see Last Jedi, Michael Strahan's assistant had arranged for us to go see the friends and family showing of Last Jedi together, and which CC and I didn't even know we had plus ones, but we did. So we go to the theater, the day comes, and I'm like, hey, man, I'll see you at the theater. He's like, okay, cool, whatever. And I'm like, hey, man, when are you going to be here? He's like, not answering me. I'm like, there's already kind of a line forming. I'll get in line. I'm online. I'm like getting close to the front. He's not answering me. I like get my ticket, and I get back in line so that I'm holding it for him. He's not answering me. He texts me. He's like, hey, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm still in Jersey at Carter's game. And I'm like, now the movie starts now in 15 minutes. I'm like, well, yeah, of course you're not going to make it. Dude, you were never going to come. He's like, yeah, I knew I probably wasn't. And I'm like, man, why wouldn't you just tell me that? Why wouldn't you just tell me that? And he's like, hey, cuz we're going to be friends for a long time, man. So let me just say sorry in advance for when this happens again. I'm just like what? But what made me feel better about it was Derek Jeter told a story on R2C2 on our first ever episode of CC signing up to be the celebrity guest in a foursome at Derek Jeter's golf tournament. And, day in advance, Jeter checks in with him, doesn't hear back. Day comes where he's raffled off as, the person in the foursome to a certain group. He's not there. Foursome day comes. CC's not there. Never told Jeter why. Never told him why. Just totally ghosted him. He ended up having a conflict with his camp in Vallejo, but he was so afraid of conflict in this regard, I guess, that he just ghosts instead of just sharing it. So, I mean, it's probably something C needs to work on, but I take solace in the fact that if he can ghost Derek Jeter, well, he can certainly ghost me, and I don't need to take offense.
Pretty funny. Last thing before I let you go, it's kind of a hypothetical, but I think it's a pretty cool question I thought of. I got to pat myself on the back. Would you rather announce, if you had the opportunity, and you only could pick one, a World Series or an NBA Finals?
You see, this is where you try and get me in trouble with one of my networks, Peter. Man, I honestly, I don't know that I have a preference, and that's not me sidestepping your question, because that's a dream, for both. The Super Bowl too, any, big championship event is, an ultimate goal of mine in my career. And the NBA Finals are definitely a dream. And, any championship would be a dream. How about calling like the Yankees in a World Series? I mean, pretty amazing. So I can't say definitively. All I could say is that I hope to call championships someday.
Ryan, I appreciate your time today. The first official guest on Straight Shooting with Pistol Pete. Moving forward, that's going to be the name of the show. I think
I like it. I like it, Pistol Pete. Nicely done.
R2C2, you recorded and you said today for Thursday, so that comes out every week, right?
Every Thursday. Yeah, every Thursday, available on Uninterrupted's YouTube page and on our podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find R2C2 and download, subscribe, rate, review, listen, all that good stuff.
Appreciate it. All right, Ryan, thanks for joining me today, man. Be safe. Take care.
You got it, man.